Sexual frustration. That has to be the number one cause for infidelity, especially in men, closely followed by a bad relationship. For women, it's probably opposite. It's the bad relationship first and the sexual frustration second. Those two things are the leading cause of infidelity. I had a great comment on a video of mine recently about affairs that just summed up to a T what a sexually frustrated man would sound like. And this is a great opportunity to talk about what you can do to combat possible infidelity and possibly remedy your sexual frustration. So let me just read it to you. Now a widower, but had a happy marriage with a reasonable amount of sex. Never in 36 years had an affair. However, my God, the burden of having sex with the same woman the same way, year after year, decade after decade. I did cyber sex, phone sex, video sex, and may have met up with a few women for one-time encounters. I have no doubts, no regrets, or shame over any of it. Well, obviously, I'm sorry for his loss. He's talking about the wife who is now passed on. But I will say that he is validating his decisions to cheat. Okay, what he was describing was cheating. It's obvious, but he was validating his decision to do so. And he used that validation as sexual frustration, which I get it. If you're sexually frustrated and you're in a marriage, I get your frustration. You feel like you're stuck. You feel like you have nowhere to go. Guys like this, guys and women like this, are conflict averse, period. They avoid the conflict of confronting their spouse, whether it be a man or a woman. It goes both ways on this. Avoiding conflict is what leads to cheating and divorce, ultimately, in my opinion. Here's what I would have asked him and worked on him with had I talked to him face to face, okay? All of these things that I talk about can be applied to men and women. So first question, did you ever try to branch out of the routine? Did you ever try to branch out of it? That can be spoken or unspoken. Trying to lead your wife or your husband out of the routine without talking about it and just doing it, that should be your first line of defense. All right, so if you find yourself in a normal routine, one position, certain time of night, certain time of day, it's on you. If you're the one that's frustrated, it's on you to try to attempt to branch out. Okay, different time of night, different position. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to say anything, especially you guys. Men, it is on you to lead your wife in the bedroom. I will hold to that forever. Okay, women, it's great if you can lead your man in the bedroom, but that shouldn't be the go-to. Okay, it's really on the man to lead your marriage in your bedroom. Period. That's just me. So lead your spouse out of that routine, out of that rut. You can either do it without speaking about it, or you can talk about it. Okay, I don't always recommend talking about it because a lot of times that can make it a little awkward. But if you're attempting to do that without speaking and it's not working, you're gonna have to say something. That is the essence of being conflict averse. If you don't like that conflict, well, nothing's going to change, period. All right, so that's the first question. Now, the second thing I would say to this guy, did you confront her with your thoughts if she was unwilling to compromise? Did you actually say something if she was unwilling to try something different? Well, you're the one that's frustrated. Maybe she wasn't frustrated. Maybe she likes routine. There are a lot of people out there that like to be predictable. It's probably in the minority. Typically, sex is good if you can branch out and be unpredictable. But did you confront her? Okay, if you just went on without saying anything, how would she know you were upset about it? Now, if your partner is unwilling to compromise, that's going to equal big problems. All right. In a marriage, it's a two-way street. If you've got a spouse that is unwilling to change over time, even though you've said something's bothering you. That goes for just about any subject, but especially in the bedroom. From this description where he gave it, he said he was having a reasonable amount of sex. Well, that's a lot of wiggle room that you can work with. A whole lot of room for me to work with you. Say, for instance, do you have fantasies? Did you ever talk about them? Did you ever even act them out? Role play. If if you like acting out a certain scenario or a certain scene, certain outfits, there's all kinds of different ways that that you can actually play with roles, and you just have to be creative. You're really just limited by your own creativity. Everybody's got their thing in the bedroom. Some people love a 30-minute massage, no sexual contact, a lot of anticipation. Other people like to go right into things, a wham bam session. Other people enjoy a good mixture. There's all kinds of different tastes out there. So if you're not talking about that regularly or discussing these kind of things in a marriage, in a long-term relationship, well, you're missing out on a very, very good time when it comes to your physical relationship. As long as you keep it fairly unpredictable, introduce new things, and keep it fun and keep it light, there is nothing wrong with that. Another question I would ask him is how you initiated sex. When did you initiate sex? Did she initiate sex? Did you? In my opinion, it should be 80% guy, 20% woman. You need to mix it up, but you need to lean towards the guy initiating sex more so than the female long term. That's just my opinion. 1 out of 5. That's a good ratio. How you do it makes a difference. If you do it the same time, the same way, you're going to get predictable. It's going to get boring. You're going to get sexually frustrated. One of the two of you is going to get sexually frustrated. So mix it up. Use of porn. You can actually incorporate that in your bedroom as well. Porn isn't always a bad thing. It's a bad thing if you have a bad sexual relationship in your marriage and you're using porn as a crutch. That goes for men and women. That's where porn becomes a major issue. But you can still use porn in your marriage. Say, for instance, you have a scene that plays out and you can replicate that. A certain act, you can tell your partner, this is what I like. Porn isn't all Satan. Okay, it's there, it's available. If you're into that kind of thing, that's great. Maybe you didn't know that she was into that kind of thing or he was into that kind of thing. It's just another thing that you can try to mix it up. Toys. Obviously, there's 1,000 different toys out there. Shoot, I mean, you can actually pick up wand vibrators in Walmart nowadays. Readily available, Amazon, you name it. Try new things. Okay, if a toy doesn't work very well in the bedroom when you try to incorporate it, then forget it. If you do find something that works very well, you can stick to it. But it is always a problem if you only use one item or one particular trick. Anything that's predictable in the bedroom can get boring over time, period. Mix it up. Now, if you like this material, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate those that have already done that. Hopefully, I've earned that subscription from you. Thank you. So what do all these tips have in common? It's good communication, embracing the conflict, and trust, specifically sexual trust. If all of those things have been exhausted that I've talked about, you should look at getting out instead of cheating, okay? I'll repeat that. You should look at getting out instead of cheating. I am not a zealot. I understand that some relationships should end, especially toxic ones and abusive ones. If you find yourself in a hopeless situation, like it sounds like to this particular guy, he said he had a good marriage, right? Well, the marriage was good except for the sex. I don't know how many times I've heard that statement from someone that I've talked to. Well, the marriage is not good, okay? The marriage is not good if the if the sexual relationship is not there. In my opinion, the marriage is not good. What's the difference between friends and lovers? It's your physical relationship. If your marriage is good except for the sex, well, you have plenty to work on. Fixing your sex issues in a marriage takes everything to the next level. Everything. Now, I know there's a lot of ladies that listen to my stuff. You're probably cringing just a little bit, and you think that I only think that marriage is only about sex. That's not true. The emotional connection needs to be there too, obviously. The emotional connection leads to the physical connection. Totally understand that, but I'm just talking about the people that are sexually frustrated in this episode. There's a lot more to it. Obviously, marriage and divorce and infidelity is very complicated to talk about, but sexually frustrated people are all over the place. I've seen it many, many times while talking to people. I am of the opinion, if your marriage is on the rocks, your sexual relationship is not good, and you've exhausted all of your options, you've embraced the conflict, you've said something and nothing's working, you're with somebody that is unwilling to compromise, you should look at getting out. If you need an outside supplement to be happy outside of your marriage, in my opinion, your marriage is already over. And that's just me. I am not one of those people that says marriage is for everyone. It's not. Some people can't do it. Now, nobody chooses to step out, but it's a lengthy process. You get frustrated and somebody comes along that gives you attention, and that goes for men and women, and bad things happen. So work on your issues, embrace that conflict, and let's make your marriage better. Let's make your relationships better. There are exceptions to the rule here. Obviously, this isn't going to work for everyone. One, if you have a partner or a spouse that is completely unwilling to change or compromise, that is a problem. Like I said, if you exhausted all of your options, they're unwilling to change, they're locked in, they're being stubborn, and they are not changing, you're going to be in trouble. Another exception would be a deadbed situation. Okay, a deadbed by definition is having sex less than 10 times in a given year. So if you're having sex less than once a month, technically that's a deadbed. These things that I'm talking about here, these tips that I've given you, that's not going to work very well because you're going to have to remedy the deadbed situation. Because if the sexual frequency isn't there, then you can't work on this. Okay, so you need to work on the deadbed first. And how do you do that? Well, you work on yourself. Are you the best version that you could possibly be? Do you have your financial house in order? Are you leading the relationship well? Are you actively going on dates? Are you connected as a couple? All of those things make a difference in deadbeds. I don't want to talk about deadbeds in this episode because that's a totally different episode on its own. But if the sexual frequency isn't there, what I'm talking about here is not going to work. Past sexual trauma is another exception. If a person in the relationship has had multiple problems in their past, especially if they had a troubled childhood, when it comes to sexual trauma, this isn't going to work very well. That's going to require a lot of effort on their part. Unfortunately, you can't fix that. They're going to have to fix that themselves. You can support them, obviously, but they're going to have to do the work ultimately. So that's another exception. And then the other exception that I've heard many times are the medical issues. Okay, hysterectomies, menopause, ED, cancer. Now, I have the most sympathy when it comes to couples with medical problems. That's a tough mountain to climb when it comes to sexual problems in your bedroom. But if you've done all of these things and things have not changed and you're still frustrated, you need to look at getting out as opposed to finding someone else on the side, period. That's how I feel about it. You do you, but I have zero respect for cheating. So there you have it. Sexual frustration. That is a very, very common scenario that I see in people who cheat and people who get divorced. And a lot of times, they just avoid the conflict. The problems add up and bad things happen. If you avoid the conflict and think that things are going to change, I got news for you. They don't. It doesn't work that way. So until next time, be better than you were yesterday and be desirable.